What is going on? Welcome back to another episode of It's a Blast podcast. My name is Mike, also known as the EOD Happy Captain on X. If you like the content that I'm producing, please like, subscribe, and follow along. Today, I'm sitting down with Mike Norton, a battalion commander in recruiting in Miami, and we're talking about all things recruiting. Let's get started. Welcome to the It's a Blast podcast. My name is Mike. Here, I talk to members of the veteran and military community about their leadership style and how the military has affected their lives. Let's get started. What is going on? I am sitting down with Michael Norton. He is a recruiting battalion commander out of Miami. What is going on, sir? How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. Hey, it's awesome to talk to you.
Yeah, hey, so, I see a lot of stuff on social media when people talk about the state of recruiting and where the military is at. And I thought to myself, what better way to debunk some things and have a conversation than talk to somebody in recruiting, right, within USAREC. So, before we get ahead of ourselves, just a little bit of background on you. How long have you been in the military now?
I signed my first contract in 1998, August of 1998. I commissioned in 2002, so I'm coming up on 26 years total.
26 years. So, I mean, obviously, you've gone the distance, right? And so, what made you want to join the military in the first place?
Yeah, so Mike, I'm an Army brat. I've held an ID card every single day of my life. My dad retired from the Army in 1996. I signed a contract in 98, as I mentioned, and so I've held an ID card every single day. I saw what the Army was, and I liked it. I will tell you, my dad recommended I join the Air Force, and like all good kids, I didn't listen.
Did you think, I mean, you're at 20 over 20 years. Did you think that this was going to be a lifetime event for you, or do you think this was going to be kind of a do a contract or two and then get out?
Initially I said 20 years, right? That was the plan.
Yeah.
And then as I started to roll through at about the 8-year mark, wow, this is pretty tough. And you have to appreciate that, the folks that came in about the time I came in, it was a lot of combat operations, a lot of deployments, a lot of being gone. And so, I can appreciate that a lot of my peers got out. But then, I kind of put my head down and said, I like doing this. And ultimately, I'll tell you, I truly love and my passion is taking care of people. And what better way to do it than in our nation's Army?
Yeah, hey, look, I agree with that. My dad did over 30 years. And to be quite frank, I never wanted to join the military, right? Joining the Army was never on my list. It's kind of funny, actually. So my best friend in high school, did JRTC. His dad was a command sergeant major, and he was Army, Army, Army all the time. And for me, I was like, man, it's not for me. And now I look at it as I hit my 16-year mark. He's a tattoo artist, right? Out in Rhode Island, covered head to toe in tattoos, right? So we took very different paths, but it's
Sure.
kind of like somewhere we flipped along the way. But when I joined, it was going to be for 3 years. When I finally said, okay, you know what, I'm going to try the Army out, and here we are, 16 years later. So obviously, like you, I've enjoyed my time quite a bit. But let's talk about recruiting, right? Let's
Sure.
talk about where the Army is at. uh, every time I go on social media or every time I look at the news, it's that the state of Army recruiting is in disarray. And so, what do you think about that? I mean, as a battalion commander in South Florida, um, do you think that we're having a huge recruiting issue in the Army?
So I'll tell you bluntly, no. No is my answer. We don't have a recruiting problem in the Army. I will give it to you straight, right? I think we have a lack of accountability problem, which is a leadership issue. Recruiting, and I say that from perspective, having commanded 2 recruiting battalions now. I commanded Tampa Recruiting Battalion before this, and now in Miami. We've achieved mission on both sides, our regular Army and our Army Reserve mission. This month, in the month of April, we are going to close mission again on both sides for the 7th month in a row. We overproduce significantly. Year to date, I'm a little over 150% on the regular Army side, about 108, 109% on the Army Reserve side. So to go to the crux of your question, we do not have a recruiting problem, right? My old command sergeant major told me the secret to Army recruiting, everybody wants to join our Army. We just have to ask the question. And I'll tell you that it rings true every single day. I talk to people everywhere. Hey, you ever considered joining the Army? No, but I'd like some information. So I think the issue is not a recruiting issue. There are levers in place that make joining our Army much easier than it's ever been in the history of the Army, to be frank with you.
Yeah, but what would you say to someone that says, it's only easy to join the army because we've compromised our standards in the last couple of years, ASVAB score requirements, the general intelligence to join the army has significantly decreased over the years and people still aren't meeting that standard because I see that a lot when I'm online. That's one of the constant narratives that I see. So what do you say to that?
I would simply offer with a smile, I would offer that they're uneducated, right? So here's why. Let me tell you about
Yeah,
the standards.
educate me, please.
The standards in the Army have not changed at all. What the Army has done is the Army has taken what's happened in society, COVID and amongst many other things, and provided more opportunity. So to when you ship out with an MOS to join our Army, we now have a qualifying QT score of 16 and above. Yes. But our standard still remains 31 or above when you ship off to the unit. What the Army has done is something that no other service has done. We provide an academic environment to teach folks not the test, but to teach people how to take a test. We find that the intelligence of our young men and women today is significant, but they don't know how to take a test. So test taking skills is something that we're finding is improving their scores 80 to 90% with a success rate. And these folks are qualifying now in the alpha category, which is 50 or higher on the ASVAB. So we're taking a young man or woman who was not confident in taking a test. We're sending them to Fort Jackson, South Carolina to get some additional academic training, right, which they may have lost due to COVID and or whatever else was going on. And then we're giving them the test again. And they're scoring 50, 60, 70, qualifying for every single job, qualifying for all the bonuses that are out there. So I would only offer, again, with a smile to whomever says that, they perhaps are reading the wrong things. No standards have changed. The Army is still the Army of the past. But I'll tell you that we've adapted and we're a kinder, gentler force to people because people is our number one priority.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and so when you talk about that course that's out there in South Carolina, we're talking about the soldier prep course, correct?
The Future Soldier Preparation Course, that is correct, yes.
And so is that only for test taking and education or is that for fitness as well?
Yes, so there's two phases, right? So one is for the test taking education aspect of things, and one is for fitness. So what the Army has said is based on society and the societal changes. We have folks that aren't the same size as they used to be. I mean, look, some of the standards that you see across a grown man is not the same size as he was back in 1940, 1950. That's just the data, right? So what the Army said is, hey, we'll let you start the process with a little bit higher body fat percentage. And what we're finding is we send them off, and now we teach them how to run, which nobody ever taught me. They simply said, hey, here's some shoes, go get 2 miles. We're teaching them nutrition. We're teaching them how to be better about fitness. And so ultimately, I would tell you, it's just my opinion. We don't have the data yet. But I would tell you they're probably going to be able to serve longer because they won't have all the injuries that we all had when we went out there and just ran, right? I could tell you when we first joined the Army, you may have stretched for a couple minutes and you go to run. The way I ran on the football field is not the way I should run my 2 miles or 5 miles or whatever else. So, it does address both. It addresses academics and then it addresses physical fitness and nutrition as well.
No, I think you hit on a really valid point there, right? I mean, like I'm at 16 years in the army and I have just now started teaching myself how to run because prior to, getting a little bit older, a little more, injuries on my body, I just went out there and I ran and I could, right? I mean, I could put down a 12:30, 13-minute on the 2 mile time and it was never something I was concerned about. But as I have gotten older and my knees and my back have started to hurt just a little bit more, right? Now it's something that I have to actually do all that stuff you're talking about, right? I have to stretch out before I go for a run. I have to cool down when I'm done. I'm doing tempo runs and, heart rate zones and zone runs, right? Stuff that like I didn't even know what it was. I had to go reach out to other people, and of course now we have the new revamped FM 7-22 talking about how to do all this stuff. So the fact that people are learning this, but here's a question to you, and we're talking about injuries now. What is your take on MHS Genesis, right? And so first off, can you explain what Genesis is to those people listening or watching that may not know? And then what would you say to people that say, hey, Genesis is crippling the amount of people that we can put on the military just based on pre-existing conditions and injuries?
Yeah, so two sides to that. What is it, right? MHS Genesis is federal law. I mean, so ultimately, this is nothing that's made up. This is federal law that we will run folks through the system. What it does is it takes an applicant and it checks all the medical systems to draw documentation. Ultimately, I would tell you that I think it makes it a safer process for the individual. If there's a medical condition inside your file that could be exasperated by military training, we don't want to put you through that. The Army, look, I know we can look at it in multi facets, right? We can say, hey, it's slowing down the process or it's hurting recruitment. That's not the case at all. I would argue it's helping to ensure that that individual thinks they're healthy, but they know they're healthy. So the system checks all your medical records and it pulls up any data that's there. I would tell you right now, though, listen, initially when it rolled out, it did slow things down. That is a fact. But we've been dealing with Genesis and working with it for well over 18 months now. And I'll tell you that the process works. We go through, if something pops up, it goes to a United States Army doctor, and then they look and they say, okay, we can waive this or we can't. Majority of our medical waivers, the overwhelming majority, are waived in relative short order. So I think the Commanding General of the United States Army Recruiting Command has put a lot of systems in place to expedite the process, but doing so fairly to ensure that the medical aspect is taken care of. So, no, Genesis is not the cause of people not joining the Army at all.
Yeah, I mean, and not saying this ever happened with me or anybody else, but it makes it seem as though the days of a recruiter saying, "Hey, lie about your bad back or lie about your bad knee," this effectively ends that, correct?
Yeah, so yes, it'll end that. But I want to back up a little bit. So
Yep.
the recruiting non-commissioned officers across United States Army Recruiting Command, I promise you, are not doing the wrong thing. The old stories, right? And we've been around a long time. Old stories of, hey, we're going to do the wrong thing and just get you in the Army. Look, this force is extremely professional. There are standards. We have a standards division that inspects everything we do. We have by the book standards of what we have to do to put somebody in the Army. If an issue arises, as a battalion commander, we have to investigate that issue to make sure that we are doing the right thing. So I would tell you that yes, it could end the one-off that may be trying to do the wrong thing, but I assure you that 99.9% are not. But what this does is it helps our force just a little healthier when they come in. Because I'll tell you, we are now putting folks in at a little bit older age too. I can put you in very successfully at 41 years old without much issue. Now, there's AGTPs for that stuff. So a 41-year-old has experienced life, right, and possibly has some injuries here and there. We want to make sure we are protecting the Department of Defense, the United States Army, and ultimately each of us when we're relying on the person to our left and right in a combat situation should it happen.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, let's go back a little bit and talk about recruiters, right? The people that are actually doing the recruiting for the Army. Um, what would you say to that person who comes down, their Department of the Army selected to be a recruiter, and maybe that's not what they wanted to do? I mean, what would your advice be to that person? Because I see that a lot as well. Hey, I just came down on drill sergeant orders, or I came down on this type of orders. But one of the big ones is, hey, I came down on recruiting orders, and I don't want to be a recruiter. What would you say to that person?
So a couple things, and I'll share. Right when I was a company commander back in 2007, I remember getting those packets. Right, individual has ordered like, sir, I really don't want to do this, and I didn't know much about recruiting at the time. But I would tell you that the individual who gets the orders now, hey, you are going to crush this mission. I promise you. I already gave you the secret to Army recruiting, so you start one leg up on everybody else. But the first thing I would tell them is, like anything else you do in life and in your career, give this a chance. You will be successful if you choose to be successful. And I'll tell you, Mike, I have multiple NCOs inside my formation right now that have written 20 plus contracts since October. So our
Wow.
commanding general is asking them to write one contract a month. That's it. I have folks that far exceed that, and they do it every day. And I'll tell you that the first year in recruiting, you're kind of getting your basis and understanding things. Your second and third year, it's a 3-year assignment. Your second and third year, you are rocking and rolling. I have one individual that's on track to write about 55 to 56 contracts in a 12-month period.
That's
So,
impressive.
my piece of advice to that young man or woman, that non-commissioned officer that's coming out here: be the professional that you are, and go and crush this mission on behalf of our Army.
I mean, what is the secret to being a good recruiter? I mean, is it cold calling people? Is that successful? Or I mean, what is the secret to getting people to say, "Hey, I want to join the army"?
Yeah, so the secret is to ask the question, right? But the bigger side is it's a matter of just talking with people, right? I don't need you to talk at people, just talk with people. Find out what people you'd be surprised, right? A lot of folks' goals in life align perfectly with the Army. They just never have heard of the opportunity. And again, I don't want to keep tying to COVID, but ultimately we all went through that piece. Army recruiters were not in high schools for a handful of years. There's a lot to overcome, with that. So folks don't know the Army. They don't know the Army's an option. They don't know that the reserve component is an option where they can maintain their current job. So I'll tell you that the secret is just to talk to people. Have a conversation. Hey, Mike, what are your interests? And let me tell you how the Army can help you with those interests. Ultimately, if you say no, that's not a problem for me. I just want to be able to provide you the opportunity. So when you don't know what to do, perhaps you give us a call and let us show you the path we can put you on.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. When I came in the army, I came in on an 18 X-ray contract. So that's a special forces candidate
Yep.
for those that don't know. It did not go well for me, right? And I wound up in explosive ordnance disposal and EOD, all this stuff around me, right? But after I got into EOD, I realized if I had known that this was an opportunity, I probably would have enlisted on an 89 Delta contract EOD. I just didn't know that this was an option. I just saw a lot of videos of guys fast roping and doing CQB, and I said, man, that's what I want to do because that's what the Army is, right? But I don't think people are aware that, hey, you can be a veterinarian in the Army and take care of military working dogs. You can be a military working dog handler. You can be a doctor. You can be a dentist. You can be an infantry guy or gal. You can do field artillery, right? So you can do combat arms, but hey, you want to fly? Because you can fly too. I was just at a graduation for my best friend, also an EOD tech, who is now a Black Hawk pilot, right? At 16 years in the Army, made the transition over. Um, you know, Backing it up a little bit and talking about you a little bit, you're a gold badge recruit, like you're a gold badge recruiter, right?
I am. I
So what is that? What does it mean to have a gold badge? What are the standards for that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, when you go, you're selected for Army recruiting. If you are a Department of the Army select recruiter, you're going to go to what's referred to as the ARC, the Army Recruiting Course, and we are going to teach you everything you need to know about, located in glorious Fort Knox, Kentucky, everything you need to know about Army recruiting. We're going to teach you the standards. We're going to teach you how to put people in the Army, and then we're going to give you a big practical exercise at the end where we're going to fly you to another city, and you're going to put the skills to work. Then we send you to your unit, and we put you in a training program that is going to ensure that not only did you get trained at the schoolhouse, which is where you earn your basic recruiting badge, but then you're going to go and apply that to your local area. Like every other school, right? I'll tell you that TTPs are a little bit different on the ground, but the ARC gives you the foundation and the fundamentals to be successful. Once you get to your unit and you start, because you have to wait till you at least ARC certified the right contracts. Once you are certified with that basic badge, you're going to go out and you're going to find people to join our Army. As you do that, you're going to earn points toward additional things, not just the gold recruiting badge, but there's a Glenn E. Morrell Award is the highest award, but in between that's a recruiter ring. You earn points by writing the contract. You earn points by the individual shipping out to basic training. And making sure that you don't have losses, right? So somebody signs a contract, they choose to back out, that becomes a loss, and it becomes a challenge to overcome. So the standard, right, is 2,400 points that you can accumulate through the ways I mentioned before. Crazy enough, right, I don't do a lot of stuff for myself, but I'll tell you that more of a longevity award for me and my passion in this mission. I am the first battalion commander ever to earn the gold recruiting badge, and I did so back in February of this year, and I proudly display it on my uniform, and I'll tell you, it becomes a conversation piece, right? It gives me an opportunity to talk with other people and share Army recruiting. So, Mike, I'll tell you, and maybe more than what you asked for in the question, but I'll give you, My first 18, 19 years in the Army, I failed to one. I was ignorant. I didn't pay attention to Army recruiting at all. I never considered trying to put somebody in our Army. And as a result, I got to Tampa Battalion when I was selected to command the battalion, and I had some work to do to make up for it, right? And since then, I grind every single day to ensure that we find enough people to put in our Army so guys like me and you can eventually retire, and the force is going to be strong. I'll tell you with 100% certainty, I am very confident that our Army recruiting is on a path to not only excellence, but sustained excellence over time.
Yeah, and I want to back up really quick to something you said. You were talking about the points that are required in order to get the gold badge, right? And it sounds like the lion's share of those points are from actually recruiting people. So
Yes.
you're telling me that you, as a lieutenant colonel, you're out there on the streets recruiting people.
Yes, sir.
And
So
that's
I'll
not
say,
that. Yeah, go ahead.
no. So I'll tell you, look, it's like everything else, right? So I have two hands that get dirty like everybody else. And everybody leads a little bit differently. I always look and say, hey, I can ask you to do something, and I can tell you to do something. That's what the Army is, positional power in the Army. That's easy. But if I'm doing it next to you, you're going to be hard pressed to tell me why you can't do it. And so I absolutely every single day. Just yesterday, I had 5 leads that I generated. Right, I find leads and I pass them to recruiters, and I watch the process. And if they need help, then I reach in and I help, and I use the context that I have to show them success. Because I'll tell you, success breeds success, and once they write one, then they keep writing. So I'm very proud to tell you that I am an active participant in the recruiting process. And again, if you have listeners out there that are interested or want more information about joining the Army, go to your local recruiting office and just ask the question.
Yeah, so let's talk about actually that's a great lead in, right? Because let's talk about that. I spend a lot of time on X, Instagram and social media in general. And I get people that reach out to me, through private messages saying, "Hey, I'm interested in joining the Army." As a matter of fact, one of my like great success stories is as I had an older guy reach out to me, say, "I'm really interested in joining the Army." We talked about it for a while. And he just sent me a photo, right, of him graduating AIT, which I thought was just like the coolest thing in the world. But what role, if any, do you think that social media has within recruiting?
I think it's significant, right? So we can fight all kinds of systems, and the Army changes, society changes. Our target audience is on social media, so why would we not be there to have the conversation as well? And Mike, I'll share with you that perhaps you don't know yet, and I would ask you to share with everybody as the soldier referral program, right? So that young man who reached out to you, if you go to goarmy.com and you build him in as a referral and tie your DOD ID number to it, not only do you get credit for his enlistment, you can get a soldier referral ribbon and put on your uniform that was generated by one of my peers up in Jacksonville Battalion when I was in Tampa. And that individual now, when they ship off to training, if they do the same thing, they can get automatic promotions to the next rank up to E4, and our E5s get promotion points to E6. So there's a huge value right now, that system we put in place, our command and general put in place to allow soldiers to recruit additional people to become soldiers. So I tell you, social media is significant, right? We get an opportunity to share a story, generate interest, ultimately to bring you into the office to show you what the opportunities are. And I think it's huge, right? So Army commercial, you see the Army, and then you do what? Maybe you go down to a recruiting station, maybe you don't. Social media, you got a QR code right there, and everybody loves to scan them. And they scan and start looking at questions and information and finding out what jobs are available. You mentioned jobs earlier, right? And I'll tell you, we have 150 jobs. 150 jobs that if you qualify for, we can get you anytime you want, right? So it really is that easy. The days of, hey, only these 10 jobs are open, that's no longer a thing. If you qualify and there's training built in the system, we can get you that job.
That is awesome. Let Why recruiting for you? I mean, is this where you wanted to be as a battalion commander? Is this something you volunteered for, or is this something that kind of came your way?
So a little bit of both, right? So I was in Vicenza, Italy at the time, and when you get assigned to Italy, you don't ever want to leave, right?
Right.
And I went to BCAP, the Battalion's Commander Assessment Program, the new assessment program for our battalion commanders. And I was found certified for command, came out on a primary list, put my selections in, and my wife wanted to go to Florida. And so Tampa was on there. I put Tampa number one, and I got Tampa Battalion, and I was very happy to do it. But I will tell you, like every good battalion commander, I'll tell you a secret, right? So the first 6 months of your battalion command time, you don't know how to command. And then you come to recruiting command, you don't know how to command, and you don't know Army recruiting, right? So you're doing a lot of learning. So no, I didn't choose recruiting, but I'm very honored to be in the mission. And I'll tell you that I don't think there's a better spot for me to be in doing what I've been able to do. I love sharing my Army story. I love providing the opportunity for somebody else to experience what I've experienced. You mentioned just a couple seconds ago when that young man sent you a picture, graduated in AIT, how it made you feel. Imagine feeling like that every single day when moms and dads are calling you and thanking you for, turning their kids' life around or providing them an opportunity. It's pretty significant.
You got to watch out. You're going to wind up inadvertently recruiting me to come be a recruiting commander, right?
Hey, we can have that conversation. I would encourage it. I promise you.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, everything is for me. I'm kind of going where the Army needs me these days, and I've had a really, really good time and a really good run. Let me ask you this question that I see a lot online: is I would never recommend the military to my family, to my kids, or anybody that I know. If they came and talked to me about the military, I would say, don't join. Right. So, what do you say to those people? Because you're a military brat. I'm an Army brat as well. Would you recommend the military to your kids?
In a half a second. The answer is yes. So I'll tell you, I have a 20-year-old daughter and I have an 11-year-old son, and I've talked Army with them multiple times. In fact, they actually look and talk to their friends about the Army and work on recruiting with me. But I would tell you that the opportunities the Army presents, not just to me and my family, right, but to all of us, it's far greater than putting on boots and jumping in a uniform. It really is, right? We can talk benefits for days, right? But the biggest side is you join the largest family around the world, right? The Army family, we preach family, we preach taking care of people. And it's funny, right? When we all get out of the Army, we all tend to migrate together. I certainly would want that for my kids, and if I didn't, I'm not a hypocrite at all. If I didn't want that for my kids, I wouldn't try to sell it to somebody else's. I do that every day. And I'll tell you, one of my conversations that I love the most is when I sit down with the young applicant and their mom and dad or any of their other influencers, and I just share what the Army has done for me. And you see smiles around the table, and usually it's hey, when do I start the process? So I'm telling you that yes is the answer. I'd recommend the Army to my kids, to your kids, to anybody that's out there.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I'll tell my story really quick is, I kind of said at the beginning of this show when we were talking is, I never really wanted to join the Army. And then I was going through community college. And to be quite frank, I was going nowhere fast. And I thought to myself, yeah, what the hell? And I'll do 2-3 years. And those 3 years have turned into 16 years. But here's kind of the deal is I came in without a degree, used tuition assistance, got my associate's degree, did a deployment, became an EOD tech, thought to myself, man, maybe I could do more. Maybe I will stick around. I kind of knew I was going to be in the Army for a minute when we had just come back from our first deployment and we were training up for another deployment. And the first sergeant and commander walked into the high bay where we were all training and said, "Hey, Mike, you're not on this next rotation. You're on the roster for the next deployment." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they were like, "Yeah, you don't have enough time left in the Army, so we can't take you." And I signed papers that day, right, to reenlist to stay in because I want to go back downrange with my guys. And I did. And then I started thinking like, well, what the hell else can I do in the Army, right? And so I got into Green to Gold, which is a program that takes enlisted service members and allows them to become officers. So I went back to college as an active duty staff sergeant. I got paid as a staff sergeant to go to college, used my GI Bill, so I wasn't paying for that, right? And I commissioned, and I came right back into EOD. And since then, I went to Germany for 3 years. I was in Kosovo on a rotation. I was in Ukraine before the war kicked off, training other EOD techs. And I look back on my career every day, and I still am not sure if I'm going to do this for a career, even though I am, right? Because I'm taking it day by day, thinking to myself, like, I can go do something else, right? But like I'm at 16 years And the more I look at it, the more opportunity that I see the military has given me. My father did over 30 years. My brother, and I don't want to steal all the bandwidth on the show, but I will tell you this: my brother came in at 18 years old as an 18 X-ray, and became an 18 Delta. So for those that don't know, a special forces medic. Was on the teams for a long time. Did some other cool guy stuff behind the fence, and like now he's a brain surgeon, right? He's a full-fledged medical doctor, like brain surgeon. He's got 22 years in the Army, and he's still going strong, and he plans on sticking around, for the long haul as well. So yeah, look, I agree with you. I would, for those listening, I would 100% recommend the Army and the military to anybody that's listening, especially the Army, right? Not the Air Force. But, I 100% would recommend this job to anybody that's listening. So before I let you go, do you have any, parting thoughts that you'd like to share with people that may be listening or watching?
Yeah, and so listen, the opportunities that the Army presents are significant. And again, we talked about it before. We talked about the family relationship, but I want to offer something a little bit different, right? I've asked a question to many, many people over my career. Have you ever wanted to have a bad day? Nobody to this point has ever said, yeah, I want to have a bad day. So I would submit to all of you, don't, right? The way you react to everything is a choice. The way you are with people is a choice. You want to smile, smile. And my challenge is, here's how you test out if you're ready for this. Go out in traffic. I live in Miami now, right? Miami traffic gets pretty crazy. Go out in traffic, and when somebody cuts you off, how do you respond? Because that's a choice. You control you, and I promise you, if we all control ourselves, the entire world's going to be a little bit better. The Army will give you the opportunity to experience all of those things, but just do it with a smile, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, one parting thought, as you are a recruiting battalion commander, if you have any potential applicants or candidates that are interested in explosive ordnance disposal, EOD, and you are trying to find someone for them to talk to, please, please, please use me. If there's one thing I love, it's the Army, but if there's two things I love, it's talking about EOD as well. So, hey, sir, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me this afternoon. I look forward to talking to you again in the future offline, and have an absolutely great day and keep doing great things.
Mike, I appreciate you. I appreciate the platform, and I appreciate the opportunity.